Hey everybody, welcome back and thank you again for looking at this channel. I think I've shot this video twice now and both times it turned into some rambling. So I'm going to do my best to try and be a bit more concise in this part of the video, or at least in this attempt. Last night I talked about the idea that you only have so many projects you can do in a decade, right? And the idea of avoiding shiny new idea syndrome. And tied into that is the idea that a lot of your success comes on the other side of probably the better part of a decade of writing. You'll see how this ties in a minute to the shiny new idea syndrome and stuff in a second. I know at first it doesn't seem like it, but now that I've been doing this for over a decade now, any kind of success that I've had, book signings, publishing these books, people talking about my work, etc., getting short stories now in lit mags, that stuff has come in the last couple years. That has come at the tail end of a decade of writing. Those first 7-8 years that I was doing this, I didn't get anything. There was nothing. Nobody. I mean, my God, I think I started this channel around, I think it was like year 9, maybe something like that, of writing, maybe 8, I can't remember. But no success came in those first years. None of it. It was all diligence and it was all just putting the time in. And looking at it now, I'm being a bit reflective just because I have a signing here on Saturday. If anyone's in the New Hampshire area, you can check out my Instagram. I made a whole thing about it. But kind of being a bit reflective here, that first decade, right? I talked about yesterday about how in a decade you have 3 projects you can write, 3 really good projects you could probably get done in that decade. That first decade of writing is like absolute torture getting through it. And it's now on the other side that you start to see the benefits of it. You start to see the reason why it's not just about not jumping from project to project all the time, but being about diligent with your work. It's every day that you work at writing, every day you work at really this is anything, it is like you're putting a little drop of water, like an eye drop full of water into a bathtub. Every day you do that. And what happens is after several years, finally the tub starts to get full. And that's when you start to get the payoff. That's when, again, stories start to come out. Certainly you start maybe getting some small success. But the bigger deal and the bigger success comes in when you recognize that you can start to take stories that are conceptually in your head and start to make them actually appear almost in the way that you imagined them. Almost. To take a story that you've been conceiving for so long and you finally can write it on the page and it looks so fucking close to how you conceived of it. And in some ways, it never lives up to it. In some ways, your work never lives up to what's in your head. But in other ways, you surpass it. And you look back years later and you can't even imagine when you first conceived of the story how the depth of the story would go to. As George R. R. Martin had talked about the tale growing in the telling. Yes, he was talking about just coming up with more ideas and expanding this, a trilogy into a 7-book series. But the concept remains, right? The idea that when you conceive of an idea, it seems really beautiful, but you also can't really understand the depth of how far that thing can go. And so when you actually begin to write it out and you get it on the page, and in some aspects, it surpasses what you can conceive. It's amazing. That really is the joy of writing. That really is, if you're someone wants to be an author, that's kind of the intrinsic joy you're going to get. Is when your story surpasses your initial conception of it. There are other things too, obviously, other intrinsic joys, that I've talked about before, but that is amazing. It's amazing to see it. It really is. And I'm getting a little wide-eyed, I guess, right now, a little misty-eyed here at this, because it's I know what it was like though those first years. I know what it was like to fucking suck at this thing forever and ever, and finally start to see the other side of it. And the idea of working at something for a lot of years is the compound interest kicks in later on. I took better part of a year off from writing. I wrote intermittently here and there, but I was never really that consistent over the past year when I had my kid. For 1 year, I basically did not really do much of any writing at all. And when I did do writing, I was tired and I was miserable because my kid was up all night and I wasn't sleeping. But in a few weeks, the skill came back. It came back, and that's the benefit of the compound interest. That is the compound interest of writing. It's the idea that after so many years, decades, you have this thing built up where you can take a little bit of time away, you can jump right back in. That's cool. That pays dividends. There are other things that are going to pay dividends going forward that I probably can't even conceive of right now because I put in 10 years of really, really wanting to suffer. And I'm harping on the 10-year thing because it's not just me, obviously. It's a pretty consistent thing amongst writers that it takes probably 10 years before you get published, at least. It's not an unheard of story at all. That you toil for a better part of a decade on something, and you finally catch it towards the end. Sometimes even longer. I mean, hell, I'm still I get 2 books out, but I'm still waiting for my big break. I'm still waiting for some massive success to come. Who knows? Maybe it never does. My point is, tie it back to the idea of the shiny new idea syndrome and all that stuff is, if you're going to be the dabbler, if you're going to jump from project to project all the time, you're never going to get the ability to sustain yourself, to spend years crafting these stories out, which is where the real skill comes in. It's not that I wrote for 10 years that I became good. It was that of those 10 years, I spent a lot of that time working on projects, rewriting, editing, getting the skill of trying to get a sentence to be clear and concise and to say what I want it to say, to write by implication. These are skills that take time and require you to do several drafts of a project. If you're going to be a dabbler, what's going to happen is you're going to jump from project to project as these new ideas and these new cool stories come to you. And you're going to end up with drafts and drafts and drafts of first drafts, scripts or manuscripts. And a folder full of first drafts does not make one a great writer. A folder full of unpublished works that have been edited and reviewed half a dozen, sometimes more times, that makes a good writer. The skill comes in building in the rewriting. It's a cliched thing to say, but yes, writing is rewriting. So I won't say 90. Majority of the work of writing is in the rewriting. Majority of the skill that you develop comes in the rewriting. It's not having the idea and just dashing it off. It's diligently crafting words and taking concepts and reworking them over and over. And so I'm gonna hammer this point one more time. Please try and find projects that are worth spending some years on. Really do that. A person that spends 3 years writing 3 okay drafts of 3 different stories is going to probably not get any. It's probably going to be a lot further behind than one person who spends 3 years working on one story, but getting that story as polished as they possibly can. From a skill development side of things, that second person is going to be far farther ahead. And long term, that's what you want. The skill development is what you want. That's where the payoff comes in as a writer. And so I'm going to leave it here. I'm not going to hammer that point anymore. But yes, for those that are working at this, Keep that in mind, please. Really try and toil and keep this sort of concept in the back of your head that you gotta push. You really, really, really gotta push to stay with your projects and not stop.